Venezuelan flags and portraits of the late Hugo Chavez, chanting slogans that echo through the wide avenues near the United Nations office in the capital. Many of them say they are here not only to support their president, Nicolás Maduro, but to send a message abroad, particularly to the United States. Among the demonstrators is a man named Manuel Arturo Ladera, a 62-year-old worker from the Maiquetía airport near the coast. His words capture the mood of many here. "I am here today," he says, "because we want to tell the President of the United States that this is a country of peace, not war, and we have always been peaceful, and to tell Mr. Trump to take his ships and his few batteries that he has here, because this is not a drug trafficking country. I am here today because we want to tell the President of the United States that this is a country of peace, not war, and we have always been peaceful, and to tell Mr. Trump to take his ships and his few batteries that he has here, because this is not a drug trafficking country." His statement reflects a deep resentment over the recent escalation between Caracas and Washington. Only days earlier, the US military carried out strikes on vessels it described as drug smuggling boats operating off the Venezuelan coast. In Washington, President Donald Trump praised the action as a necessary measure to cut off the flow of narcotics through Caribbean routes. American officials say the maritime trafficking networks have been linked to tens of thousands of overdose deaths in the United States each year. But in Caracas, the strikes were seen as a violation of sovereignty and as an act that risked triggering a wider conflict. The Venezuelan authorities reported that at least 21 people were killed in the attacks. Most of them were believed to be crew members of the targeted vessels, though the government has called for an independent investigation. The images circulated on social media by the US Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, showed explosions lighting up the night sea as what he described as narco boats were destroyed by US Navy fire. The anger in Caracas was immediate. Many Venezuelans argue that the strikes were unjustified and point to the human cost. For the government, the incident was portrayed as another example of Washington's long history of intervention in the region. Supporters of President Maduro rallied in the streets, and in speeches he framed the moment as a test of Venezuela's resolve to remain sovereign and at peace. As the marchers moved along the avenues in Caracas, Manuel Arturo Ladera returned to the microphone for a second time. His tone was calm but firm. "Well, gentlemen," he said, "we are truly a country of peace, but if they really come to attack us, we will be prepared for it." His words were met with applause by the crowd around him. To many, it was a declaration that Venezuela was not seeking war, but it would defend itself if forced to. While these rallies unfolded, President Nicolás Maduro appeared on state television to announce a startling development. His government, he said, had foiled what he called a false flag operation targeting the US embassy in Caracas. According to Maduro, Venezuelan security services had received intelligence from both domestic and international sources suggesting that a local extremist group planned to plant explosives at the American diplomatic compound. Maduro framed the alleged plot as an attempt to provoke a crisis between the two nations at a time of already heightened tension. "This is an embassy," he said, "that despite all the differences we have had with the US governments is protected and preserved as required by the Geneva Convention and international law by our government. It is an embassy, like all embassies, that is permanently guarded, cared for and respected." The president stressed that Venezuela, regardless of its disputes with Washington, upholds the international norms that protect foreign missions. He warned that the aim of the plotters had been to detonate the explosives and blamed the Venezuelan authorities for failing to stop it. A classic false flag tactic intended to inflame already volatile relations. Officials in Caracas said security forces moved quickly once they confirmed the threat. Several suspects were reportedly detained, though the government has not yet released their names or affiliations. Investigators say they recovered materials that could have been used to construct an explosive device near the perimeter of the embassy compound. The US mission has not commented publicly on the allegations, but US officials speaking off the record to foreign media outlets have said they are seeking more evidence. For many Venezuelans, the claim of a foiled embassy plot served to underscore a sense of vulnerability. The country has been grappling with years of economic hardship, political divisions, and the outflow of millions of citizens seeking work abroad. Now, a security scare at the US embassy added a new layer of anxiety. On the streets of the capital, demonstrators carried signs not only calling for peace, but also denouncing what they described as external meddling in Venezuela's internal affairs. Some voiced anger at Washington's long-standing sanctions, which they say have worsened the country's economic crisis. Others warned that the recent military strikes and the alleged plot could push the region into a dangerous spiral. In response to the rising tensions, Caracas deployed thousands of troops to the country's land and sea borders and expanded the recruitment of a civilian militia, a paramilitary force the government says is meant to bolster national defense. State television showed columns of soldiers in desert fatigues moving along highways and patrol boats heading toward the Caribbean coastline. This escalation reflects the fragility of the relationship between the two countries. The United States has long accused Venezuela of harboring or facilitating drug traffickers, an allegation that Caracas denies. Washington has also criticized Maduro's government for what it describes as democratic backsliding and human rights violations. Caracas, in turn, accuses Washington of economic warfare and political interference. The demonstration in Caracas, while framed as a peace march, also became a platform for Venezuelan citizens to voice their opposition to US actions. Many participants said they were there to show unity in the face of external pressure, a message amplified by the government in its official media. Well, gentlemen, we are truly a country of peace, but if they really come to attack us, we will be prepared for it. This is an embassy that, despite all the differences we have had with the US governments, is protected and preserved as required by the Geneva Convention and international law by our government. It is an embassy, like all embassies, that is permanently guarded, cared for and respected. International observers note that the stakes of the current standoff extend beyond bilateral relations. Venezuela holds some of the world's largest proven oil reserves, and instability there can ripple through global energy markets. Moreover, the presence of US naval forces in the Caribbean has long been a sensitive issue for Caracas, dating back to the Cold War era. The Venezuelan leadership has repeatedly accused the United States of using the fight against drug trafficking as a pretext for asserting influence in the region. American officials reject that charge, saying that the maritime campaign is focused on reducing the flow of illicit narcotics that fuel violence and addiction in US communities. As the story of the alleged false flag plot emerged, analysts in Washington and other capitals debated its credibility. Some foreign policy experts expressed skepticism, noting the lack of publicly presented evidence. Others argued that in a climate of mutual suspicion, such plots cannot be dismissed outright. For ordinary Venezuelans, however, the details of intelligence reports may matter less than the immediate fear of conflict. Many say they worry that the exchange of accusations and military maneuvers could escalate into direct confrontation, something they desperately want to avoid. At a rally in downtown Caracas, an elderly woman holding a faded national flag said she came to demand that her grandchildren not grow up under the shadow of war. She recalled the turbulent years of coups and street violence in Venezuela's past and said she hoped leaders on both sides would step back from the brink. Across the Caribbean and in US cities like Miami and New York, Venezuelan diaspora communities followed the news closely. Many have family members still in the country and expressed concern about the risk of sanctions tightening further or new military actions being ordered. The international community's reaction has been cautious. The United Nations has called for restraint and urged both sides to resolve their disputes through dialogue. Several Latin American governments issued statements expressing solidarity with the Venezuelan people while warning against actions that could destabilize the region. Back in Caracas, President Maduro has used the episode to rally his supporters, portraying Venezuela as a nation under siege from external forces but committed to peace. In speeches, he emphasizes that the protection of foreign embassies on Venezuelan soil is not a favor but a legal obligation, a point he says underscores the false nature of accusations that his government would ever permit an attack on such a facility. The longer-term question is whether this incident will become a turning point or just another episode in a long history of confrontation. Some observers believe the exposure of the alleged plot may cool tensions by preventing a provocation that could have triggered a crisis. Others warn it could deepen mistrust. with each side suspecting the other of ulterior motives. As night falls over Caracas, the protesters disperse, their chants fading into the hum of the city's traffic. Soldiers remain at checkpoints on the highways leading to the coast. At the US Embassy, additional Venezuelan security personnel stand watch at the gates, their presence a visible reminder of the uneasy truce between host nation and foreign mission. For the people of Venezuela, the hope is that their country will avoid becoming the stage for another geopolitical confrontation. For Washington, the challenge remains balancing its counter-narcotics objectives with the need to prevent escalation. And for the region as a whole, the episode highlights once more how fragile peace can be when mistrust and history collide. This documentary has followed the voices on the ground, like Manuel Arturo Ladera, declaring his nation's peaceful intent, yet readiness to defend it, and the words of leaders like Nicolás Maduro, insisting on respect for international law. It has traced how a single incident, the foiling of an alleged false flag attack, can become entangled with larger issues of sovereignty, security, and diplomacy. As this story continues to unfold, what remains certain is that the Venezuelan people, caught between great power rivalry and local hardship, continue to call for peace in their streets, even as the world watches closely to see what comes next.